And I want to go into the reasons, some of the contributing factors that I believe has helped me age well, helped me age, yeah, well, I guess, gracefully. Um, First, as I take a sip of coffee, first, I want to tell you some things that I don't do. I don't have any fillers. I don't do Botox. I don't even get facials. I don't do any supplements. I'm not obsessed with biohacking, like none of that stuff. I'm like, psh, I don't even know what that is, right? So all of it is natural. I chose, not I chose, but I just want you to see also that there's no ring light. There's nothing here to try to change my perception or appearance on this video. It's just me in the morning. I did take a shower, but I didn't wash my hair. Anyways, I just got a haircut too. So so let's get off all that off the table. I will say I don't have any judgment around people that do any of that stuff. I know people say that all the time, but it is true. I just feel for me, it's not in integrity. It's just not in integrity for me to like mess with any of this. I actually really like the way that I'm aging, but more importantly, I actually like who I am. I actually love my own company. I love who I am in this very moment at 50, almost 51 years old, because I will turn 51 next month. And this is a big contributing factor, I believe, for why I look better or good for my age, not even for my age. Let's just say I look good, okay? So there's three factors I was thinking about this. One is mindset, huge. Two is lifestyle, and three is purpose. These are the three things that I believe are contributing to my ability to age well and to not care about, again, like all the external stuff or what people might say about my appearance, right? So, mindset. Let's talk about that one. If you are, oh my gosh, she gets the zoomies after she eats, where she like zooms around. Um, Mindset. Yeah. So I started my spiritual journey in my early 30s. I had just moved to New York and I was pursuing a music career. From in my 20s, I was sort of like pursuing a music career ish. I also had a corporate job. And then I was like, I'm going to New York and I'm going to live out my dream, blah, blah, blah. So I show up, and after 2 years of just feeling like I was a failure, like I wasn't getting anywhere, at that point, I thought success meant, well, it meant that I could make a living doing what I loved. And it just felt like I couldn't do it. I didn't have a record deal, manager, anything like that. So I just kind of crumbled. And my therapist at the time, she recommended this workshop and I took it. And the first thing the woman said was, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your actions are creating your reality. And I was like, what? At that point, I was just a victim. I thought things were happening to me. So when she said that, I had no idea that I was contributing, that I was co creating my reality. And that's what opened the door. I had this huge awakening, and that led me to diving into all these spiritual, personal growth books, right? It started with Marianne Williamson's A Return to Love, then Wayne Dyer. I read like all of his books. Then I did different workshops. And I mean, I just kept going. And then simultaneously, I was in another job that I didn't like. And I was like, I just kind of was like, I really just want to do something that I love, that I feel like is an extension of who I am. And yoga had always been a part of my life in my 20s. So I decided to go through teacher training. So I learned about even more, right? The yoga, all the different, mindfulness, meditation. I mean, just like everything. And quit that job, decided to become a yoga teacher. And then I became a teacher full time in New York City for 12 years. Taught everywhere, said yes to everything. And so, all of this to say, all of that journey of being aware now of what are my thoughts, what are my beliefs, what are my reactions, What are my actions, right? All of that is contributing to how I'm feeling and how I am perceiving, right? A lot of it is perception, how you're perceiving the world, because I was no longer looking at it as this is happening to me. I was looking at it, this is happening for me. Everything is happening for me, including and especially the things that I don't want. And you can't see it in the moment, but that muscle of just training myself, I started a gratitude practice. I just got really into, I'm going to shift the shit out of my mindset so that I can feel better. I wanted to feel better about my life. And then as a consequence, my life got better. And I built this beautiful community. And they followed me. I did retreats and it was so fun. So my job became an extension of who I was and who I am. And that has always stayed with me. So that's huge. Lifestyle. So as I said, my job was no longer just a job. It was now an extension of who I am. So I started to live and breathe and do all of the practices that I was teaching. And so much so that when the pandemic hit and I moved back to LA, um, I really went fully in deep. And because I moved back to LA, which is where I'm from, I did a lot of inner child work. And one of the things that I reconciled with, right? I think anybody going through a lot of shadow or inner child work, right? It's deep, it's intense. But one of the things I really reconciled with was I'm not meant to do it like everyone else. I don't know why I keep trying, because that's what was causing a lot of suffering in my life was this idea I had to be successful in a certain way that looked the way that everybody else was successful, right? I had to live according to what society was telling me would make me happy, i.e., buying a house, being married, having children, all of those things. And that was when I really started to kind of open up and go, well, wait a second. What if I stopped following that path and really owned and kind of doubled down on who I really am and what I really want? And that's the third piece, which is purpose. So I had always loved Paris. I visited Paris in my 40s, or when I turned 40 for my 40th birthday. I also went on this massive fun journey, which is very me, where I stepped into fear 40 different ways. And I did this journey called 40 Fearless Acts at 40, and it took a year. But in that journey, it was amazing. I did things like I went to a co-ed naked yoga class. I introduced myself to all my neighbors by knocking on their door in New York. I asked a cute stranger for a kiss on the cheek. I sang on the subway with my guitar. I posed nude for an art class. I tried on a wedding dress as a single person at David's. I know, because I wanted to experience like what would it be like to try on this dress that I had imagined as a little girl. So I did all these things, and what was so beautiful as a byproduct of just stepping into, let me just see, like, what do I want to do today? What seems inspiring? What scares me? But I know it's going to be really exciting on the other end. It's going to be really fun. I blogged about it. I'm going to share the blog in the show notes. As a consequence for living that way, my income doubled. I ended up moving out of the apartment that I really wanted to get out of it into another apartment. And then I ended up having a relationship that just kind of came out of nowhere. All these things happened. And I thought, just by doing the things that light me up, that I feel inspired by, that scare me, but only because I've never done them before, but I've always wanted to, just by doing that, my whole life kind of externally changed for the better. And so that kind of planted a seed for this journey that I'm on, which is all about living in surrender. So, purpose, excuse me, I'm getting over a little cold. Purpose for me just means being who you really are. That's it. That's our whole job. That's all we're meant to do this life. is to be who we really are. Excuse me while I take another sip. I think, and when we are being our authentic self, our lives are not going to look like everybody else's, and they're not meant to. The more authentic you are, the more you're going to have contradictions. You're going to it's you're going to be more of a fully fledged human being because you've explored what you don't like to know what you do like, etc., right? And so, having said that, when I got to Paris, this dream that I had, ever since I arrived when I was 40, when I was able to make that come true, about 6 months after being here, all of a sudden this flood of programming started to show up in my mind again. It was like, you've got to do this. Because at that point, I had pivoted my business strictly online. I'm now a life coach. I'm a fearless coach. I'm teaching other women how to be fearless in their lives. I'm doing soul readings. And it was all about, you got to do this post and you got to do this and how you're going to get more clients and da 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 da. And I was like, whoa, whoa. It was like, it's never enough. That's basically what the programming was like. So you think that being in Paris is going to change you? Like, no, you're still going to have all this programming. And I was just so tired of it. And I was like, okay, I need a new way to approach this new chapter of my life so that I'm more present, so that I'm not so caught up in what everybody else is doing. Because I was at that point on Instagram and seeing how everybody else was talking about how they were growing their business. I've always felt it can be easy. It gets to be easy. It can be fun. It doesn't have to be filled with doubt or pressure. So at that point, I started listening to this podcast, and this woman was saying how she spent 1 year living from the end state. The end state being, I am my most successful, fully abundant self. All my prayers are answered. And by living from that end state for 1 year, her whole life changed. Her whole external life changed because she realized that, first of all, when you have these limiting lack based thinking beliefs, which we all do based on conditioning, right? When you are starting to shift away from that and know that you're always taken care of, that you're fully abundant, that everything is here for you, what ends up showing up is a lot of contrast because everything that was in you that was based in lack and being separate, and I've got to fight for this, and I've got to go out and work hard to make something happen, all of that bubbles up and shows itself in the 3D reality. So you can see and go, oh my God, I was giving all my power away to this thing that's happening right now. So I have a choice. I can either believe this external thing that's happening and then crumble and go back to my old way of trying to make myself survive through limitation and anxiety, etc. Or I can choose to believe this is here for me just to show me that, oh, look, this is where I had a lot of fear around. But I know it actually isn't true because most of what shows up, in fact, all of what shows up in our reality is from past belief. So the more energy you give this thing, the more it's going to get bigger. Anyways, by the end of her year, she had success, etc. So that really inspired me. And this is another clue that when you embark on a journey that's your own, that you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm putting the stake in the sand. I'm declaring this is how I'm going to live. What I've experienced is, I don't know if you've read The Alchemist, but what happens is you have beginner's luck. So in the beginning, when I was like, I'm going to do this, this sounds great. I've never done this before. I believe in this. I can do this for a year. When I put that stake in the sand, what I realized is in the beginning, it was working. So what was I doing? I was looking at myself in the mirror. This is in the beginning, a few months. And I was hyping myself up by just talking to myself, saying, your life is amazing right now. You've got, all these clients and you're, it's so successful and this and that. And it's like, I just kept like hyping myself up. I don't even remember what I was saying at the time. And it started to work. And in the first 3 months, I got 3 new clients and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yes, this is going. And then it stops working. And why does that happen? It happens because in the beginning of our journey, we need to have evidence right away that it's working. And then that's when we get initiated into the, I want to say, the embodiment of the knowing, right? How do you know something versus just think? You have to embody it, which requires experience. So that initiation process is going to be challenging for a reason. You're going to be challenged with every old belief, every fear. And my greatest fear was what would happen if I ran out of money and I had to be homeless or without a home. So here I was, 8 months into this, new surrender experiment where I was no longer taking action from fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, and stress. I was only taking action from a place of inspiration, joy, of curiosity. And a lot of the time, I wasn't taking any action at all because, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I'm a big fan of, he will often say, when it's bigger than you, get out of the way and just trust, like keep working on the meditations. Like, don't do anything, don't take action when the circumstance feels too big. So a lot of times I did nothing. And so here I was, like the money was dwindling. I had 1 month left, and coincidentally, it's May. Yeah, May 1st was when I left my apartment 2 years ago. Crazy, it's been 2 years. Anyway, so I was leading up to it in April. What am I going to do? This can't really be happening. And at the time, I was reading Harry Potter. Excuse me. And honestly, it was helpful because Harry Potter helped me understand what true surrender really means. It means giving up the fight. At the end of the book, I hate to spoil it for you, he realizes he spent his whole life thinking his purpose was to kill Voldemort, that he's this great wizard, right? No, his purpose actually is to be killed by Voldemort. And when he has that realization, he walks to his death, surrenders completely. And what happens? He gets killed, but he doesn't really get killed. The part of him that is tied to Voldemort, because they share a soul in the book, which I believe the part of us or the part of me that is tied to the old self, right, dies, and then he is reborn again. We are reborn again. So I was like, yes, that's exactly what this moment is. I'm going to give notice. This is my Voldemort moment, blah, blah, blah. I gave notice. I felt liberated, honestly, because I had so much fear around the what if that when it finally happened, oh, I could breathe again. It was like all that energy just came back to me. And that's what happens when we are afraid of something. We avoid it. We're literally giving all of our power away to it, even if it's subconscious. And I realized I spent my whole life so afraid to go too low that I would never soar so high. So at this point, I was like, let me go all the way, baby. Gave my notice, felt liberated. Now, of course, very scary. And you can watch other videos here because this was the whole reason I started this channel, was to share my journey, because it's very unconventional. There's no textbook that I'm going to try to figure this out. I'm living through it moment to moment. And I want to share in a real and vulnerable way what it's like to know something intrinsically, like in my heart, in my soul, and to live that. That's purpose. That's integrity. That's going to sleep at night going, I'm proud of myself for what I've overcome. I'm proud of myself for how far I've come. That I never gave up on this belief. And look at how my life, but more importantly, look at how I've changed. Look at how I feel about my life, how much I appreciate it every single step of the way, where you hit an edge, you never think you're going to make it through, and then all of a sudden you go further, you go further, you go further, and there's more, and there's more, and there's more. All of this to say, It's been an extraordinary journey beyond words. I'm writing a book about it. I journal every day. I'm sharing this on YouTube in hopes to inspire. If you have a belief about something, a knowing, I believe you owe it to yourself to start living that way. Let go of what, and I know it's hard. I don't say this lightly. I know it's hard to let go of conditioning and what society says, but you take steps, baby steps, you know? And then you get to a place where you are almost 51, because I will be 51 June 6th, and you can say, in full appreciation, no bullshit, I really love the person that I am today. I really love the person and the life that I lead today. And I don't know, I can cry. I am going to cry. I just, it's hard to put into words, but it's a feeling of nothing outside of me can give me this. Not the $1,000,000, not the house, not the, I don't know, the husband, the kids. I gave it to myself just because I'm living the way that my heart and my soul is aligned. And that to me is the greatest youth serum. That's what people feel. That's what you feel. Probably watching this, that's what radiates out of me. So with that, thank you for joining me on another video. I'm going to finish my coffee and journal. Take care, everyone.